This is the Verify Testing Think Big for March 2nd. This is a Think Big part of Think Big versus Think Small. The topic today is I've renamed to Enabled by default, but Drew, I think your issue was make all the things work or something like that. Turn everything on by default. Turn everything on by default. So in the agenda, I have our normal prompt questions, but Drew, why don't you give us a like 30-second overview of the issue before we start?
Yeah, so where this came out of the customer conversation we had on Verify Day. And a few of us were chatting after about how we are talking with like one of the most successful use cases of GitLab, right? This team loves GitLab, and their feedback was still, we'd love some more testing to happen automatically and just jump in there and tell us what's wrong. So we kind of had this takeaway that we're not being forceful enough, and we should we should be giving answers maybe that people haven't asked questions to yet, and we should be more opinionated, and we should just tell you, hey, you're doing this. This is what we think of it. If the people who like and use us most enthusiastically don't have like all the verify testing features turned on, that's probably a sign that we're not being aggressive enough. So the idea behind the Think Big issue is how can we be as aggressive as possible? Like be way too aggressive, make people have to turn stuff off, go super overboard.
Cool. I would augment your question just a little bit to say, how aggressive can we be to answer customer problems they don't know they have? Or to answer customer questions they don't know they have. I realized that problems they don't know they have wasn't really a question. Or, yeah, sorry. I don't know if it's too much coffee or not enough still.
I wrote a little bit about this in the Think Big issue, that there's a sort of, they're not the first person I've talked to say, I wish there was some automatic guardrails, and which sort of gives me the impression that it's like saying, not only do I not know what I want, I don't even want to know what I want.
So tell me more about the guardrails. I'm going to kind of jump into what's the problem we're trying to solve, or what's the problem the customer has that they're trying to solve. What guardrails what do they want to stop? How do they want to be stopped?
Yeah, just to jump in before that, the thing that they had said that was interesting to me is like they were kind of disassociating the problem with GitLab, right? When they were talking about, when I asked them that question, like what's next on the roadmap? What are you thinking about in the next year and the next 3 years for evolving your DevOps toolchain? And they basically just said, yeah, I know we need to do some more testing, but they didn't have a clear idea about what their strategy would look like or what they could use in order to get there. So I think that that also points to giving us an opportunity to shoehorn ourselves in there before people even really have a strategy formed, because that seems like a common trend. Sorry, that seems like a common trend as well in industry, talking to people. It's like, oh yeah, I know I need to be doing more testing. I need to be doing more with testing, but it isn't very clear to a lot of people, particularly if they don't have like a ton of historical experience with unit testing and Uncle Bob and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, so it seems to me like the proximate, like the immediate ask that's already in their head is wanting the reliability, wanting the confidence, that sort of that a higher level need than the testing itself is, people are aware that they want all the benefits of testing. but maybe not knowing what that testing itself looks like is part of the reason, you know, this customer hasn't built it yet, is because there's not a strong enough, not a clear enough picture of what exactly can I do that's going to get me this confidence and reliability that I feel like I want.
Yeah, and like we know this. We know that confidence and reliability factors into many different spots in the kind of like software development lifecycle, right? Like code review, the fact that we have maintainers, that's a big confidence thing. Because we have that maintainer process to give us confidence that the changes that they're merging in are going to be okay. But another company who has like really lots of confidence in their unit tests and end-to-end tests and things like that might not require that maintainer step, because the tests themselves provide enough confidence that as long as it's been code reviewed, it's probably fine to go in because the test passed. So I like framing it that way, Drew, a lot, around confidence and all the things and benefits that you get from being confident in your changes moving forward. That's actually part of the vision for the team as well, is to, you know, provide confidence to software development teams to deliver.
So ultimately, the customer is still going to have to write their own tests. What are we saying we want to give them confidence to, like insight into what their tests are doing right, or showing them their tests aren't quite enough yet and to do more? I know this is our whole like
yes
role, but
yes, yes. So that would, I think, enabled by default and where we're going with confidence are a couple different things. But so enabled by default, I would say for us means every scan runs if it can. You get load performance testing, you get browser performance testing, you get accessibility. Hi, dude. You get all of the things that are going to scan. In code quality, I think, or static scanners, plus looking at how much coverage you have, potentially play an interesting role in that. And we can start to point out where there's gaps in your tests, or point out, hey, here's problems. And that would be the next step for them. So even if they've only written one test, we can say, hey, you only have 99%, or you only have 1%, that wasn't right, of your code covered, and it's all low quality. So here's where you should start writing tests to get more reliable.
Yeah, and there's, like you're saying, there's stuff that we can do without them having to write tests as well when it comes to code quality and static analysis and linting. Like we can kind of just, like Drew said so eloquently in his issue, we can just throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks.
linting is an interesting one because it's very opinionated, super opinionated.
But maybe that would force them to take some action. I'd be like, oh,
Yeah,
I'm going to upload my own linting rules so that this thing stops yelling at me.
Yeah. When, like Drew said, customers want us to be opinionated for them because they just don't know where to start. Like the best analogy for me is when I don't know where to start on a direction update and my manager has just opened an MR that updates one line for me, like it gets me over the hump. Even if I'm going to delete what they've written and replace it, it gets me started. And so if we give them, here's, like you're running Ruby, here's whatever the Ruby linter is. And if you don't like any of these linting rules, you can turn it off, but at least now you know there's problems in your code.
I would bet that if we stepped in and chose on behalf of customers, a significant amount of them, if not most of them, would be satisfied with a single way having been chosen, more so than what that way is. Like just the idea of getting to the one standard and not having the 10 competing standards.
Agreed.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think we can also just show this is why we chose this linting standard. Maybe this is like standard practice, like with JavaScript, often we use like the Airbnb one, whatever Airbnb uses, because we trust them for some reason.
You could choose whatever is the most popular. You can choose whatever is going to run the fastest. Like we don't have to worry about the minutia today. So pulling back out just a little bit, the problem we're trying to solve is customers want to be more reliable and no testing can get them there, and they don't know where to start. Does that sound like a decent summary? Okay.
I think so.
Cool. So we've used customers as our who has this problem, but if we were going to focus in on a single persona, where would we put our focus? Who has this problem? Who isn't mandating that tests are written, or who isn't writing tests because they don't feel like they know where to start? Or which multiple people have this problem?
Sasha and Delaney, right? I don't know any of the other ones, but
I'm terrible with the names.
It's all right. Give me a roll. You don't have to use it.
I'm gonna go with the Scott and the Ricky.
That would be the Sasha and the Delaney.
Okay.
Am I Sasha? Yeah.
Yes,
Ricky's saying
So,
yes.
yeah.
Do we distinguish between maintainer and like a role, or we just like a Sasha the developer?
I don't know
Sasha's
that there's
developer.
yeah, Sasha's the developer. I don't know that there's a
I don't know
maintainer
if there's
role.
a maintainer yet. So with the developer, it's like you have out of the box, you can see exactly what you want or what you need to develop and write more. With the lead, it's all right, what do we need to focus the team on, kind of thing. I think also upper management would be good to see, the overall projects, like our code quality is really low. Therefore, I should be able to like reprioritize the department to focus on code quality instead. It gives me more of a reason to, rather than, sometimes the developer is like, hey, our code quality is low, and upper management, it's you have to really persuade upper management to get behind those kind of refactors.
This might also vary across the maturity of the project. I'm thinking about like at GitLab, I think the higher level sort of management and progression functions are more useful, but in cases like for a brand new project, or somebody doing a 5-minute production app type of thing, it's a place where it's more valuable for the individual developer to just like click the yes, I want testing button and have it all slammed right in there and say, oh, look, we ran 1 billion tests and your app's great, deploy it. You have 30 seconds left. Like it's sort of how good is my testing so far, and what testing how much generic testing can I automatically add right now? I think are different. I don't know if we have like the equivalent of personas for projects, but the stage of the project, I think, is a factor here. If there's existing code, or if I'm starting from, Rails new.
Is there something that we can solve for that's generic to any project?
Yeah, I think it's hard to get away from us being able to parse something, right? Like, how do we know that there's no tests or not? It's almost like we would need to. I feel like this is the UX go-to, but we need to get to Clippy somehow and be like, hey, it looks like you don't have any tests. Did you know you can upload a test report in your CI pipeline and we'll integrate blah 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 for you? You know what I mean? Like that prompt to get users to engage with it. It's hard to know how to get away with that, get away from that, particularly when it's entirely language dependent and project dependent. Like there's 4 different ways to hook up a Cobertura report, at least to a Java project. And then that just depends on whether they're using Maven or it's like a Android app, or like it depends on their build manager and a bunch of other things that kind of determine how they're actually going to be able to get that test data into GitLab.
So let's assume that we can do that as we continue to think big, that through build packs or things like that, we can say, hey, it looks like you run tests and don't upload data. Do you want us to fix that for you so you can look at that data here?
Yeah, that'd be neat, because like chances are if they're running tests, they probably have like a build stage called test or a build group called test. And we can kind of like, hey, it looks like you're running tests. Did you know you could blah? That's kind of a neat angle. I like that.
I think CI did something similar on the DAG, where like there was a prompt, the tab was there on the pipeline and they prompted users of how they could visualize. But that's starting to think small. Let's think big again. So let's move on to...
The way I see is...
Go ahead, Fabio.
Yeah, so the way I see is that so far we have 2 main types of tests that we could run. So it's like some tests that could be performed from the outside in, like code quality, and some tests that require the developer to actually write the test and like the JUnit style. And so we could be able to automatically generate jobs for the outside in style of test reports, but we won't be able to generate like JUnit reports if we don't know, like if the user doesn't generate the XML report itself, right? So we might be able eventually to figure out whether there are files dropped, there are some sort of XML, JUnit XML, and automatically create an artifact. So say, hey, you know, you have some file, you didn't create artifacts, but here's the one. So I think for the second type of category, we probably could do better with suggestions. So that's probably something we kind of lack in our product, like automatic suggestions. And we do have like a feature with pipelines that we can display different types of messaging than errors. So today we can, for example, show warnings. But the plan was to also eventually extend that to even show some suggestions or info messages, stuff like that. So you run a pipeline, in the end, we might display like a suggestion there with the same type of messaging that we do errors, other things. So that might be another thing we could pick back into how we could do that.
I like that, thinking about outside in and inside out. It's a good way to break it up. Cool. For sake of time, I'm going to move us into ideal outcome. What would it look like for someone who starts a project or migrates a project into GitLab for CI? And let's say they turn on auto DevOps. What do we want the experience to be from the test data? Not Ricky should be verbalizing, which means not Ricky needs to come off of mute or I'll just keep blabbering.
People should get some free tests. some like even if they're high level, right? Something you know, get a free smoke test. We see that you have a proc file that's used to start your app. We add a test that just starts your app, and we say, congratulations, your app boots up. We checked. You can deploy it now. I'm thinking about, you know, somebody just coming into GitLab for the first time, and it's if we can hand them some stuff for free off the bat, just say, you know, welcome, you have higher quality assurance now. That would be a good first impression.
Yeah.
I think that ties into my third point, which is like once fulfillment kind of gets going a little bit and we get that better billing for runners and then better billing for shared runners, it'd be neat if we could potentially, like Drew was saying, give people some free shared runner minutes, and we can just run that co-quality job. They don't have to worry about it, that decreasing the balance of their shared runners. Is like, hey, the first one's free, you know, it's a standard marketing tactic, right?
Yeah.
Give them the first couple of minutes for free. We'll run the test for you. Don't worry about it distracting from your test, and then we'll show you how to set it up if you want to do it yourself in the long term.
Ricky, your second one, as a developer, when I set up a project with tests, test reports, inline code coverage graphs, all of that should work automatically. Can we do things like, let's say it's a Java project and we see it's using Maven build. We suggest an MR, or Dependabot suggests something in an MR to add, hey, you could generate a Cobertura file and get all of this stuff.
That'd be pretty neat. Like if you think about, we have all those examples in the documentation for this. So let's assume for argument's sake that we've consolidated all of our coverage features to only use the Cobertura report. So you have a Cobertura report, automatically you get inline code coverage, automatically you get code coverage calculation in your pipeline, automatically, I don't know, you get the test report feature too, which wouldn't really work. But then we could, like you said, we could put up an automatic MR with a bot that just adds that example from the docs into their GitLab CI YAML. Like, that's not the worst. That's kind of how Dependabot works, right? On GitHub, it just bumps the version for you when you have a security vulnerability in your dependency. So I don't know, it's a neat thought. And yeah, I talked about the GitHub Dependabot and security scanners down there. Like as a developer, when I set up a new project, it's scanned for those outside-in tests automatically, and then we give them that information. Like there's even an opportunity really where we could just do those scans a lot, like they do with Dependabot. Like Dependabot just kind of continuously runs against all your stuff, and they don't tell you about it. So we could do similar things with our own kind of runner VMs.
Yeah. So I think the theme here is that
testing do similar. Sorry, I'm wondering, does fuzz testing have a similar sort of automatic execution framework to Dependabot? I don't know a lot about it, but I know the idea is that it just automatically dumps everything in to see what lights it on fire. And so that it seems like a very outside in kind of testing, and this Dependabot stuff made me think of it.
Yeah, I think that'd be another good kind of like free trial, like get them interested in it. Like let's do the DAST scan or the SAST scan. Let's do the fuzz testing. Let's do the license scanning. Why not just do like a free scan?
Oh no, I'm thinking about like, how do they figure out what to do automatically? Like the ideas around, so I'm thinking that they probably do some kind of detection to figure out what to do automatically. And we might be able to borrow from that to design some other automatic non-fuzz testing.
I believe the goal for us will be I commit some code on master, and then even after a while, like the next day, I could get a pipeline that is automatically run by a GitLab bot that has somehow permissions to some super permissions, like in the background, that will actually, it doesn't have to be triggered by me directly, but tells me we run some tests and these are some results for you. If you want to set it up, how exactly you want to do this, here's the guide and how you can do that. It could be even like a once-off thing to kind of onboard people. Kind of so automatic demonstration how to do certain things.
Yeah. These half-hour sessions are just not long enough to think big. So we are at time, unfortunately. There's one more prompt question in here that if you have a chance and have some thoughts, I'd love to get people to contribute asynchronously, and that's how do we differentiate from the existing solutions? We talked a lot about Dependabot style. Are there other things that are inherent to GitLab that aren't like that, or we can add additional value because of our all-in-one nature, or just other ideas that are out there where we can differentiate from the rest of the market? And then I'll sum this up. I'll post the video, sum this up in next week's agenda, and we'll think small, same time, same day, next week about what is something we can put into an upcoming milestone that moves us towards the broader vision. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Great conversation as always. Appreciate you taking time to do this.
Thanks,
Yeah,
folks.
thanks, James.
Cheers.
Thanks, James. Take care.